Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you guys are. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and we got a banger video coming up for you today. I want to talk to you guys about some of the more recent events that are coming around the corner and see what your thoughts are on it, as well as give you my own little 2 opinions about it. So, with that being said, today we're going to be talking about Prism crystals as well as the next upcoming Pogo event. I believe it's going to be where you pull one, you get one. And it's going to be for ancients, I believe, which is going to be very interesting. Let's dive into it. So, with the Prism event that's currently active right now, it seems to be based off of the Gaellen summon pack pull. So, like the Gaellen pack, for the lack of better words, is something you're going to see here. If you ever look in your index, the Gaellen pack here is pretty much all comprised of Ogrins, Lizardmen, Skinwalkers, and Orcs, right? So, it makes sense that that's pretty much what you're going to see for the most part. And I'm not going to lie, I am intrigued, and I would say also, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this one myself, but I'm going to break it down about like some of the champions you're going to be able to get, some key ones that I think are pretty stand out, and whether or not it's worthwhile for you to get to go or attempt for. So, with that being said, let's dive into it. So, we have Pythion, one of the better fusion. It was a fusion-based champion that was accessible to us from doing like a fragment fusion, I believe it was, who has healing, a revive for the entire team with a strength that's attached to it, as well as an on-demand cleanse / heal that also comes with it. Basically, the more debuffs you remove, the more you're healing, and then of course the more buffs you have, the better the mitigation. So stacking up to a 25%. Really strong champion that also has like a resistance aura. Pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie, that's one of the fusions that I actually don't regret ever going for. It's actually really nice for me. So a pretty solid one. I give that one actually a thumbs up in terms of like a champion pool. Now Korgar, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about Korgar. I've seen a lot of his animation. It looks like he likes to he likes to work his way up to a fight and then work his way out of the fight, and it takes a little while. The animation is kind of interesting if you've seen him. Ally Protector, a little bit of a cleanser / strengthen, Terminator, but, increaser, a little bit of healing. He kind of does a little bit of everything in terms of, like, a well-rounded tank support type champion. I haven't seen a lot of case usage for him. He really does look kind of cool for an Ogren champion, which are the ones that have, like, a lot of unique aesthetics to themselves. But his looks pretty solid. He looks like he's there to battle, and he has everything up and running. I mean, he's very menacing, right? It's really cool looking. I don't know in terms of like anybody's experience in terms of like overall value out of this champion in particular, but I would say if you're ever looking for someone to become a pillar of support for your team, he's actually not too bad, especially with ally protections, right? Nishak, one of your go-to bombers for the Skinwalkers. I think if you've never had this champion, or if you weren't able to participate in his fusion event, he would also be a solid grab too. Not only being able to put up 2 bombs on every single target, granting an extra turn, as well as being able to activate and reduce the turn duration of those bombs so they activate the next turn. He's a very solid champion in that regard. So, and then having protected buffs, so like really good at being able to provide that level of extra damage that can't be removed because it's a protected poison, right? Solid champion. I still haven't had my way with being able to use him, and I have a couple of them, I believe. I have at least 2. So it's a little bit less of a value for me in terms of like me wanting to go from him myself, but I would say if you're looking for a bomber option, or if you're looking for someone who can provide you damage within the Skinwalkers team, or if you're looking for like an answer to Bommel, this guy could definitely help you out for sure. With that being said, we also have Uko. Now, Uko, if you saw me when I talked about promoing into Gold 1 for the first time, this champion actually did a lot of work for me, and it's still doing work for me, believe it or not. I think this is a solid champion to go for, whether it's decreased attack / block bust and decreased accuracy for content like Hydra, still valuable for being able to strip champions, as well as playing like a utility route of like CC, like in a stun set for PvP, as well as having like an extra res and increased speed. This guy does it, and being able to steal boss, which is obnoxious. This guy is really good. He's really good for this those 2 areas of content that I can think of, as well as being like a general support for your Skinwalkers. Really solid, really strong. Definitely provides the level of support you're looking for. This one's a thumbs up for me. So far out of all of them, at least 2 of them are really thumbs up. The other one's debatably thumbs down, slightly thumbs up. So not too bad from the legendaries. And I have to say, right now, from what I could see just off of the pool, there's a lot of Legos in this particular one, which is interesting. Kreela, I'm not excited about this champion at all. I hate to say it, but like, if only they buffed her up to a point where instead of it's 3 random allies, it's all of her allies. Should be up there with the likes of like Lenothril, maybe even Cardiel and whatnot, in terms of like being able to provide like a solid ally attack. But because it's randomized and it's only 3 people, not even including herself, it kind of seems like she's a little bit dated in terms of her kit. She could probably be one I would say would be up for the balance. team to look at and maybe bring her up to par with the rest of the ally protectors, or ally attackers, excuse me. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the increased attack and the increased crit rate is not bad for attacking, for attack type champions, as well as being like just a generalistic buffer. Very, very solid. As well as being able to provide a shield and protecting the one with the lowest HP for 2 turns is not bad at all. Not bad at all. But like, I think that like she pales a comparison where the big value of her kit is going to be from the ally attack, which is a dated version of it. So not too sure whether or not you want to say this or not. Dracomorph is definitely a solid champion for various reasons, right? Being an outlet for decreased defense and weaken for all enemies, to set up like your champions like Seer. Very solid champion. Also really good for like constant like clan boss if you're still progressing in the game and you're looking to find like a solid damage dealer who also does a lot of poisons, being able to attack 4 times at random. If it's only one target, it's all 4 of those are going to have a chance to place a poison, which is nice because it's a 3-turn duration. So it's going to be up there for a while. You can definitely get the debuff going, especially if you have like a faster, speedier comp where you're going faster than the boss, you know. You're more than likely going to see more poisons up there than not, you know. And then being able to do a lot of damage based off of each debuff that's on the target makes him a formidable damage dealer for a CB, as well as a setup in other areas, like I said before. In addition to that, he's also really good for just straight-up damage in general for single targets if you're looking at it based off of being able to debuff champions and whatnot. So very, very solid. Now, our recent acquisition of Ugier. I actually failed this fusion, unfortunately, and to be honest with you, I don't feel too bad about it, and that's saying something about this champion. This champion in particular, although he does have some really cool stuff like block buffs, even though it's a single target, as well as you know, removing all buffs and weaken, makes him really, really cool, especially with being able to buff champions up too, depending on their type, is nice. I feel like most content that we would want to use him in requires him to be able to do a little bit more, and that's something that kind of seems a little bit disappointing in the sense that if you wanted to use his champion, you kind of have to have him as like an only choice type option, whereas like in other areas and other content, you're really going to want to have a champion that does just a little bit more, whether that's rezzing, healing, cleansing, in the sense, like a lot more, whereas this guy is kind of more designed to be like of a utility, offensive style, or controller oriented type of champion, which is maybe not a bad thing, but you could definitely feel that I don't know. I feel like his kit is lacking comparatively to what you would need him to do in any area that you would see that's relevant for his kit. So, kind of like a eh. And I have a caveat behind this that I'm going to say at the end of all the Legos, and I'll point out maybe 1 or 2 epics that may be worthwhile your attention. But there is one key thing that I want to talk about that's going to give a little bit of validity about whether or not you want to go for any type of Prism Crystal. So, hang tight for that one. Krakmar, your HP damage dealer. He looks really cool in premise, and I'm not sure, but like the damage output that I've seen from him when I've gone against him or seen other people use him seems to be a little lackluster or kind of on par with the norm. We're looking for champions nowadays that stand above the rest of them, right? Your Georges, your Terraces, for example. And I know that that's kind of like a bad comparison because this guy is a spirit champion, but it does breathe light, like when you're stacking up against something, you're looking for the best of the best, right? If he's the only thing you got, then by all means, you use him and you rock out, right? But at the same time, too, just keep in mind that there might be something a little bit slightly better. Now, I won't lie. In terms of battle of attrition, this guy might actually be pretty strong because he'll be able to heal himself up as well as placing a shield to keep himself going for as long as he can. Now, with that being said, I don't view his damage output to be too crazy over the top. Most fights don't last long enough to see the value as much as you would like for his passive, but you know, semantics. I think he's he's going to be your standard line of DPS options that you're going to look for in terms of like HP nukers. He's pretty much on the line. Now, Jagbone Saw is an interesting one because he actually does a lot of stealing a turn meter and has a chance to repeat his skills. In addition to that, he also has a debuff spread, which is kind of nice depending on how you look at it. Now, I won't lie though. Removing all buffs from the enemies is kind of a nice little grab in there, I'm not going to lie. And then filling up the turn meter for each enemy killed by the skill makes him a little bit more of a zoomy zoom boy, but his passive is an interesting thing that kind of makes him a little bit more sheep prone in terms of placing debuffs on an enemy. And that could be dangerous. Now, I'll keep in mind, on the highest enemy with the highest crit damage for one turn, outside of maybe defensive nukers, I would say like your attack nukers and your HP nukers are typically going like blessings that are not sheep related, whereas like defensive nukers may end up using sheep because it has good defensive stats that are injected into it, as well as an element of control. You may do pretty well, but like keep in mind, like if you're going against like a Harma, for example, this could get you sheeped. Ragash could get you sheeped. you know, just to name a few, and that's not even including the support. So like, just keep that in mind in terms of like how that could affect your the play, you know, as you're doing your turns and whatnot. But nevertheless, really cool looking champion. Aesthetically, this guy looks crazy mean. I mean, having the actual bone saw makes him look like a menace, and then having the little curved blade on, like the jagged blade on his arm, his forearm is like really cool looking. I gotta say, he's like a really cool aesthetic, and that's one thing that the player does a very good job in. So now I will go on record and say that for a defensive nuker, I put him above almost all the rest of them. I think he's only adjacent, or if not, maybe slightly weaker too, because of the contributions of their passives to Harma and maybe even Torment, who's going to be acquired, but not too distant future. But this guy is a monster. I mean, I'm afraid whenever he's using his A2 because of the control as well as the damage output he puts. Being able to self-set up his increased defense for himself is a nice little contribution. I don't have Siffy, so whenever I'm using like someone like Necrid, I use him, you know, the A2 from Necrid to help him get his A1 off, which gives him the buff, which is kind of like your setup in a sense, right? While also protecting him. So very valuable in that aspect, and that's what's giving me the ability to be able to see this guy just rock out. And to be real with you, outside of the sheep-prone situations you see from the A2, you know, same thing applies like how we talked about Bonesaw over there. Whenever this does land and nobody's getting sheeped, it feels tremendously good. You going in, you're attacking, his passive's giving him a little bit of a veil, as well as anybody else who has the highest attack. So if you're with another nuker on top of that, gives both of you guys a little bit extra support in that regard of being able to survive. And that means that like your supports are the only ones that are kind of targetable outside of AoE damage, right? So very strong in that regard. He's a defensive nuker too, so it makes him a little bit more easier to survive some hits and whatnot compared to like your attack type champions. But nevertheless, a powerhouse, and this is probably one of the biggest incentives for me right now for the sake of empowerment. I recently got my Faction Guardian up and running, so it actually would breathe a little bit more life into bringing his kit up to par so that he's a little bit more competitive in that regard. And that's where I'm going to say this. In the grand scheme of things, depending on how you feel about the cost of it, it is 40 Prism shards. It's not as bad. I still can't complain about the fact that like the champion pool is pretty expansive. I think there's a couple key champions that make it incentivizing, and there's a couple duds in there too as well. So it's like you're at the mercy of RNG no matter what, but it's at a more concentrated level. So no difference. If you view shard pools in general to be kind of like for you, then I would say you would also perceive this as kind of to you. You know, it makes sense, right? But so keep no other words. I think definitely Ragash is a W. If you don't have like a strong nuker and you're looking for one, Ragash is definitely a good option. If you look for supports, you know, Python and Uko, like I said before, are also like a thumbs up for me. Now, on the flip side, there is utility champions that are really cool. We're talking about different archetypes. If you've seen my what sets, what gears, and what stats and what sets, I talk about the different archetypes. This one falls more in line with not so much damage, not so much supporty in the spectrum of like healing and sustain, but utility in the route that like you're providing increased speed, turn meter boosting, decreased speed, leech, and then of course decreased attack. And that's all while, you know, gaining turn meter himself whenever a debuff is expiring. So very strong champion. To be honest with you, this is the #1 reason why I would go for this Prism event. And the reason why is that this champion in particular, not only being strong as a general support booster, and just a faction war champion in general that would be strong for the lizard tribes, Hydra is where this guy really shines. I did a showcase on this guy, and I was using somebody else's account that was a little bit more progressive at the time. And I have to say, the experience with this guy is phenomenal. And one thing that my top Nightmare team is actually lacking from is the consistent decreased speed, which I either compromise my increased speed at the moment to find a decreased speed champion or the other, right? Well, this champion brings both, and he brings both very consistently. So like that makes his value, in my opinion, a lot more substantial, right? So this champion actually reigns really high value for someone like my account where I'm looking for that type of answer. But needless to say, if you don't have either, then getting this guy gives you an answer to both, as well as a little bit of additional support in the aspect of decreased attack. Now, he is an AoE attacker on both of his damaging abilities, so that could be a good thing or a bad thing. If you don't have like someone like Inquisitor Shamail or someone who can veil your team consistently, whenever you're going against Torment Head, this could be a bit of an issue and you end up getting feared. On the flip side, though, if you are removing that issue with the two options I said, Veiling or Shamail, then he's a great outlet for opportunities not only to control with what his kit does, but maybe consider equipping him in like something like Provoke, you know, so that he can help out with provoking. And then maybe Curse set so that you can get more hexes out. Maybe that opens up stuff for you to put another DPS or something else you need. That's the versatility that this guy brings to the table, and it's really strong. Now, with that being said, You can still go your other routes if everything else has already been taken care of. You can go the other routes in terms of they're just getting relentless for more turns, so you cycle to these abilities more, which means your turn rate are boosting more. Or you could do like reflex, so you can maybe get some cooldowns reset, something like that. I mean, the options are endless. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can play this guy, particularly for Hydra, and it's very, very strong. So a double thumbs up in terms of value. Now the last one in terms of the family of the Gaellen pack summon for Prisms is Samson the Masher. I actually have somebody in my community that has used this champion, and it seems like there is some promise. There's some potential there, but the same thing kind of holds true for when we're talking about Krokmar, in the sense that he is nothing too outlandish in terms of being substantial in the aspect of damage output. He's on par with like your standard nukers in terms of HP nukers. Now, with that being said, his value comes in the ability of being able to stun pretty often and having the chance of counterattacking whenever you're weak hit, or normal or strong. Actually, it doesn't really matter. No matter what, as long as you're getting hit, there's always a chance that you're pretty much going to have the opportunity to be able to respond with a counterattack, which means that he has a lot of control. Now, with that control means that he's also prone to sheep, and that's a positive and negative thing, and that kind of fluctuates its value a bit. But I've seen some people go bananas with this guy, and it's crazy. It's crazy to see his output, his potential. With that being said, I haven't seen him from like a true in-game standpoint. I think there's other options that people are more inclined to use. But if you don't have like a solid nuker to work with, then he's definitely a great contribution. That brings in an extra element of control, which is kind of nice. Now, in terms of epic champions to work with, there's not really too many that I would go out of my way for at the moment. If you're early game, the majority of the epics are going to be of value to you. If you're progressing more towards late game, then you're looking for specific champions, whether that's specific counterattack options like Skull Crusher, who actually he's one of the only epics that has counterattack, as well as Ugo, who is a decreased defense and block buff champion. Think about your Ogren tribe, or maybe even your Hydra team, where she is a staple amongst some of the top teams. Those type of champions stand out. Maybe a attack nuker that would be good for like a clan boss team, or a single target nuker in general for damage, who provides like decreased defense, weaken, and poisons. Not bad. Quargon for some supports. Like, there's a couple of good options. They're not too bad. Nothing too crazy outstandish outside of maybe, I would say, Venomage is a noteworthy one. Ugo is definitely a noteworthy one. That's another reason why I would pull for this event, because I still don't have an Ugo at this point, and I don't know why. Play him, please. But nevertheless, there's a decent amount of support champions in this crew. You know, if you're looking for revivers, Hofferis for the skinwalkers if you don't have that Uko. Let's see, Delijah for Lizard for being able to provide a little bit of mitigation, healing, and support in that regard. Really good that route. Greshu actually kind of clutched up for me in my efforts towards clearing Ogren, although you do kind of get him as a part of a daily login, free login. So I wouldn't want him. I want something that would be a little bit harder to acquire. So what are my thoughts on this overall? I think that this one's kind of a miss for me, and the only reason why is that in terms of like content needs, there's only a small pool that I need, and that's literally Ragash for empowerment, and that's for a quality of life improvement in terms of stat values towards making a stronger, more effective damage dealing Ragash, maybe even for survivability, because you know empowerment gives you a bunch of stats, right? Necma for Hydra. Pythium for maybe another additional Hydra option for another team, because you know you have to have three different teams for 3 different keys. Those are the only ones that really stand out. I already have 2 Ukos, and I'm using one of them already, although it's not as often. I am using one. The other one would be maybe if I built and I already have a second one, so I don't really need a third one. The second one would probably be built up particularly for like a Hydra specific build, so I don't have to swap between 2 different composition styles for my Uko. But I don't see like immense value in terms of like pulling just for maybe 1 or 2 of those champions. The only big ones that really would be like, if I got this champion, it would be worthwhile, would be Necmo, and it would be Ugo. And that's particularly for Hydra, just to make myself more effective. And then Ragash. That's pretty much it. All the rest of them, I'm not really inclined to be too excited for. Now, I will say this. If the opportunity ever came for me to be able to pull these shards, I would jump at the moment. And the reason why is that even if I did get a champion that's like a Nishak, for example, or a Pythion, that could be one step closer to filling up my Faction Guardians, which is going to help me out towards making my stats a little bit more effective. And I won't lie, just to give you context, I have my entire Skinwalkers fully finished, and it's a night and day experience. Having the 10 extra speed or the 10 extra attack just means that my builds are a lot more effective. And to be able to do that across the board for all the different types of champions you can get, you never know what's going to come down the road. Although you may not be interested in any of the 7 Watchers and you're constantly getting Lady Virus, You know, there could be that new Void Lego champion that comes out, and he's an attack type champion. He's super strong, becomes the meta, and because you invested into the stats here in terms of faction guardians, that blesses you down the road. So it's a future mindset. I'm looking towards the future with that as a possibility. But with that being said, you know, I'm not trying to overextend myself in terms of resources to acquire this. This is going to come naturally, right? And if I do get some extra amenities along the way, I definitely won't complain. So, because my faction guardians are done for skinwalkers, if I do get a Ragash, I can immediately plus them and empower them, which is a nice experience. However, is it worth the cost? And I won't lie. Typically, what I've seen is most packs are not really valuable from the standpoint of the packs that they offer in the shop. Whereas if you come here for this resource, this is probably the best one you can get. So 210 for about $50, about 420 for 100. I saw that there was a pack that showed up right when I went to my faction guardian section, where it's 400 for $99, so about $100, right? Well, if I just buy it over here, I'm getting 20 extra out of it, whereas if I buy from over there, I'm not getting as much. Let me double check just to make sure I'm not seeing that wrong. But yes, it seems like you're better off just buying from here more than anywhere else. So I'm inclined to maybe resist coming over to this shop for Prisms. Now, I did see that they also had a couple additional packs, like the mini mix pack right now is offering some extra prisms. This one could be kind of controversial because some people don't really care for the boosters or the rank 4 chickens or the Demon Lord keys, whereas like the pots, the refills, if you're trying to progress your Grey Hall up still, may be of substance, but you know, I don't know if I would necessarily go out of my way for it. Like I said, like outside of maybe 1 to 3 or 4 champions at most out of the entire champion pool of this listing is enticing for me. I don't know if I'm necessarily excited about this one too much. But y'all let me know what y'all think. Is there anything in particular that you're really looking forward to? Am I missing something? Am I missing the mark on a couple champions that I gave my opinions on? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. I feel like, as always, our experience is always going to be different, so you can definitely give me your perspective about, like, yo, although you may think about this for your champion pool and how your game experience has been, I use Kreela, and she was my go-to to get me through content. And I'm perfectly okay with hearing that story. You know, I get it. You know, we all have different walks of life when it comes to this game. So definitely let me know what you guys think. Are you going to participate? Feel free to let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And always remember, stay innocent. Click together, yeah.